Shalom. First and foremost, I'd like to give all the honor, glory, and praise unto Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shai, Bahashem, Rakakwadash. Double honors and respect to the elders and to the apostles, a great millstone. Peace and blessing to all Akim that are preaching and teaching His word with 100% truth and sincerity. And unto the men, women, and children that are listening and learning. And unto the Bayat Adawada, the elect house of David that is scattered abroad. I give you my utmost and sincere salutations. So this evening's lesson is going into the book of First Maccabees, the 3rd chapter. And we're going to go ahead and get into it. So it says right here, then his son Judas, called Maccabees, rose up in his stead. And this is the 3rd son of Mattathias. And it says in verse 2, and all his brethren helped him, and so did all they that held with his father, and they fought with cheerfulness the battle of Israel. Verse 3, so he gat his people great honor, and put on a breastplate as a giant, and girt his warlike harness about him, and he made battles, protecting the host with his sword. Verse 4, in his acts he was like a lion, and like a lion's whelp roaring for his prey. Verse 5, he pursued the wicked, and sought them out, and burnt up those that vexed his people. Verse 6, wherefore the wicked shrunk for fear of him, and all the workers of iniquity were troubled, because salvation prospered in his hand. Verse 7, he grieved also many kings, and made Jacob glad with his acts, and his memorial is blessed forever. Verse 8, moreover, he went through the cities of Judah, destroying the ungodly out of them, and turning away the wrath from Israel. In verse 9, so that he was renowned unto the utmost part of the earth, and he received unto him such as were ready to perish. So, during his time, Judas Maccabees, he made quite the name for himself on the battlefield, so much so that even the heathen were afraid of him. Anyone that crossed paths with him, they were taken out. All right, and like I said here in verse 8, moreover, he went through the cities of Judah, destroying the ungodly out of them, and turning away wrath from Israel, and destroying the ungodly, not just the heathens, but also the portion of our people that joined, hand in hand with the heathen, that joined under their lifestyle, their ways, their customs. So yeah, he not only did away with heathens, but he also did away with, the wicked of our people. Apollonius. Yes, and this was Slovakia. Okay, this is going into the first. Let me get a little bit of history of Judas Maccabeus. He was a priest and the son of the Mattathias, who led the Maccabean revolt against the Seleucid Empire. And during the holy day Hanukkah, which is the feast of dedication, commemorates the restoration of the worship at the Second Temple in Jerusalem, after Judas Maccabees removed all the statues depicting Greek gods and goddesses and purified it. Now moving on to his early victories. This is mindful of the superiority of Seleucid forces during the first 2 years of the revolt. Judas' strategy was to avoid any engagement with their regular army and resort to guerrilla warfare. And guerrilla warfare is basically a form of unconventional warfare in which small groups of irregular military, such as rebels, partisans, paramilitary personnel, or armed civilians, including recruited children, use ambushes, sabotage, terrorism, raids, petty warfare, or hit-and-run tactics to give them a feeling of insecurity. The strategy enabled Judah to win a string of victories at the Battle of Nahal el-Harmaya. He defeated a small Seleucid force under the command of Apollonius who was the governor of Samaria, who was killed. Judah took possession of Apollonius' sword and used it until his death as a symbol of vengeance. After Nahalal Harmaya recruits flocked to the cause. Shortly after, Judah routed a larger Seleucid army under the command of Saron near Betharon, since Saron was a prince of Syria near Beth Horon, largely thanks to a good choice of battlefield. Then in the Battle of Emmaus, Judah proceeded to defeat the Seleucid forces led by generals Nicanor and Gorgias. This force was dispatched by Lysias, whom Antiochus left as viceroy after departing on a campaign against the Parthians. By a forced night march, Judah succeeded in eluding Gorgias, who had intended to attack and destroy the Jewish forces in the camp with his cavalry, while Gorgias was searching for him in the mountains. Judah surprisingly attacked the Seleucid camp and defeated the Seleucids at the Battle of Emmaus. The Seleucid commander had no alternative but to withdraw to the coast. Alright, so before we continue reading, go back to Maccabees. The scriptures here. First Maccabees chapter 3, verse 10. It says, Then Apollonius gathered the Gentiles together in a great host out of Samaria to fight against Israel. Verse 11, which thing when Judas perceived, he went forth to meet him, and so he smote him and slew him. Many also fell down slain, but the rest fled. Verse 12, wherefore Judas took their spoils, and Apollonius' sword also, and therewith he fought all his life long. Verse 13, now when Saron, a prince of the army of Syria, heard say that Judas had gathered unto him a multitude of company of the faithful to go out with him to war. Verse 14, he said, I will get me a name and honor in the kingdom, for I will go fight with Judas and them that are with him who despise the king's commandment. So, since Maccabees was, gaining all this, such a powerful reputation for his status as a warrior and a leader, of course there'd be others that would come up against him to try and prove their worth by taking him out, clout chasing for that reputation, chasing for that good name. In verse 15 it says, so he made him ready to go up, and there went with him a mighty host of the ungodly to help him, and to be avenged of the children of Israel. Verse 16, and when he came near to the going up of the Betharon, Judas went forth to meet him with a small company. Verse 17, who when they saw the host coming to meet them, and said unto Judas, how shall we be able, being so few, to fight against so great a multitude and so strong, seeing we are ready to faint with fasting all this day? Verse 18, unto whom Judas answered, it is no hard matter for many to be shut up in the hands of a few, and with the power of heaven it is all one, to deliver with a great multitude or a small company. Excuse me. So, it's not a difficult thing for, Yahweh Shemel Shai to deliver a great multitude into the hands of a small company or into one, In fact, there's a scripture on that. I think it's in 1 Kings. 1 Kings chapter 20. 1 Kings chapter 20, and it's going to be let's see. So, sorry, 1 Kings chapter 20, I'm going to start. I'm going to start at verse Let's start at verse 7. It says, Then the king of Israel called all the elders of the land and said, Mark, I pray you, and see how this man seeketh mischief. For he sent unto me for my wives, and for my children, and for my silver, and for my gold, and I denied him not. Verse 8, And the elders and all the people said unto him, Hearken not unto him, nor consent. Verse 9, Wherefore he said unto the messengers of Benhadad, and Benhadad was the king of Syria at the time. He said, Tell my lord the king all that thou didst send for to thy servant at the first I will do, but this thing I may not do. And the messengers departed and brought him word again. Verse 10, And Benhadad sent unto him and said, The gods do so unto me, and more also. If the dust of Samaria shall suffice for handfuls for all the people that follow me. Verse 11, The king of Israel answered and said, Tell him, let not him that girdeth on his harness boast himself as he putteth it off. Verse 12, And it came to pass that when Benhadad heard this message as he was drinking, he and the kings in the pavilions, that he said unto his servants, Set yourselves in array, and they set themselves in array against the city. Verse 13, And behold, there came a prophet unto Ahab, king of Israel, saying, Thus saith the Lord, Hast thou seen all this great multitude? Behold, I will deliver it into thy hand this day, and thou shalt know that I am the Lord Yahweh. By Shem Yahweh Shai. Alright, so basically, the armies of Assyria and his other kings, they set up against Israel. And that prophet Elijah or Elisha, I believe, told him, the Lord, thus saith the Lord, I will deliver it into thine hand this day, and thou shalt know that I am the Lord. So the Syrians were put to flight. And this also goes into another scripture here. Excuse me. This is going to be the book of Exodus. Exodus chapter 15. Starting at verse 9, and it says, The enemy said, I will pursue, I will overtake, I will divide the spoil. My lust shall be satisfied upon them. I will draw my sword, mine hand shall destroy them. Verse 10, Thou didst blow with thy wind, the sea covered them. They sank as lead in the mighty waters. Verse 11, Who is like unto thee, O Lord, amongst the gods? Who is like thee, glorious in holiness, fearful in praise? Praise is doing wonders. So this was during the time when Israel was escaping from Egypt back then. Yahweh Shem Shai, was the one that got us out of there. So no matter how many times these other nations rise up against us, and as long as we are faithful to Yahweh Shem Shai, He's the one that fights for us, man. He destroys the enemy for us. We don't have to do anything. So I'll just use those as an example. But going back to 1 Maccabees chapter 3, verse 18 again, it says, Unto whom Judas answered, It is no hard matter for many to be shut up in the hands of a few. And with the power of heaven, it is all one, to deliver with a great multitude or a small company. Verse 19, For the victory of battle standeth not in the multitude of an host, but strength cometh from heaven. Verse 20, They come against us in much pride and iniquity to destroy us and our wives and children and to spoil us. But we fight for our lives and our laws. 22, Wherefore the Lord himself will overthrow them before our face. And as for you, be ye not afraid of them. 23, As soon as he had left off speaking, he leapt suddenly upon them. And so Saron and his host was overthrown before him. 24, and they pursued them from the going down of Bethoron into the plain where were slain about 800 men of them, and the residue fled into the land of the Philistines. Then began the fear of Judas and his brethren, and an exceeding great dread to fall upon the nations round about them. Verse 26, and so much as his fame came to the king, and all nations talked of the battles of Judas. So, once again, like I say, Judas Maccabees, he became renowned, man. He was a man of war, and he was faithful to Yahweh by Shem Shai, and the people feared him. They dreaded him. At that point, nobody would dare, dare to come up against him. Okay, this is verse 27. It says, now when King Antiochus heard these things, he was full of indignation. Okay, he was full of that anger. Wherefore he sent and gathered together all the forces of his realm, even a very strong army. He opened also his treasure and gave his soldiers pay for a year, commanding them to be ready whensoever he should need them. 29, nevertheless, when he saw that the money of his treasure failed, and that the tributes in the country were small, because of the dissension and plague which he had brought upon the land in taking away the laws which had been of old time. And the laws of old time is the law, statutes, and commandments of Yahweh by Shem Shai. Because King Antiochus took that shit out he took our laws, statutes, and commandments out of the land, and he enforced his own laws in there. Those pagan rituals, those false idols, amongst other things. Verse 30, he feared that he should not be able to bear the charges any longer, nor to have such gifts to give so liberally as he did before, for he had abounded above the kings that were before him. 31, wherefore being greatly perplexed in his mind, he determined to go into Persia, there to take the tributes of the countries, and to gather much money. So he left Lysias, a nobleman and one of the blood royal, to oversee the affairs of the king from the river Euphrates unto the borders of Egypt, and to bring his son Antiochus until he came again. Moreover, he delivered unto him the half of his forces and the elephants, and gave him charge of all things that he would have done, as also concerning them that dwelt in Judah and Jerusalem. Alright, so basically, this man was in panic mode. Let me see here. Antiochus. Let me see, Antiochus. Let me see. Okay, so this right here is the son of Antiochus the fourth Epiphanes, Antiochus the fifth Eupator. He was appointed as king by the Romans with his protector Lysias as a regent. But yeah, I just wanted to point that out. But other than that, let's see. I left off at 34 when we go to verse 35. It says, to wit, that he should send an army against them to destroy and root out the strength of Israel and the remnant of Jerusalem, to take away their memorial from that place. And that he should place strangers in all their quarters and divide their land by lot. So the king took half the force that remained and departed from Antioch, his royal city, the 147th year, and having passed the river Euphrates, he went through the high countries. Verse 38, then Lysias chose Ptolemy, the son of Doramenus and Nicanor, and Georgius, mighty men of the king's friends, and with them he sent 40,000 footmen and 7,000 horsemen to go into the land of Judah and to destroy it as the king commanded. Verse 40, so they went forth with all their power and came and pitched by Emmaus in the plain country. Going back to, let's see. Here in Judas Maccabees, it says right here, the defeat at Emmaus convinced Lysias that he must prepare for a serious and prolonged war. He accordingly assembled a new and larger army and marched with it on Judea from the south via Idumea. After several years of conflict, Judah drove out his foes from Jerusalem except for the garrison in the citadel of Acra. He purified the defiled temple of Jerusalem, and on the 25th of Kislev, restored the service of the temple. The reconsecration of the temple became a permanent Jew holiday known as Hanukkah, or the Feast of Dedication, which continued even after the temple was destroyed in 70 CE. Hanukkah is still celebrated annually. The liberation of Jerusalem was the first step of the road to ultimate independence. All right. After that, we'll get into a little bit about verse 41. And the merchants of the country, hearing the fame of them, took silver and gold very much with servants, and came into the camp to buy the children of Israel for slaves. A power also of Syria and of the land of the Philistines joined themselves unto them. Okay, so they were coming into the land, man, trying to, take all our stuff, take our children for slaves, filling up the cities with all these heathens and their ways and their customs. Okay, and of course you have our own people in there that go along with it. Verse 42, now when Judas and his brethren saw that miseries were multiplied, and that the forces did encamp themselves in their borders, for they knew how the king had given commandment to destroy the people and utterly abolish them. 43, they said one to another, let us restore the decayed state of our people, and let us fight for our people in the sanctuary. 44, then was the congregation gathered together, that they might be ready for battle, and that they might pray and ask mercy for and compassion. Now as Jerusalem lay void as a wilderness, there was none of her children that went in or out. The sanctuary also was trodden down, and aliens, and where aliens is talking about strangers, which goes into the other nations, and aliens kept the stronghold. The heathen had their habitation in that place, and the joy was taken from Jacob, and the pipe with the harp ceased. Okay, so at this point, Jerusalem was basically a habitation of devils. 46, wherefore the Israelites assembled themselves together and came to Mashpah over against Jerusalem, for Mashpah was the place where they prayed aforetime in Israel. Then they fasted that day and put on sackcloth and cast ashes upon their heads and rent their clothes. 48, and laid upon the book of the law, wherein the heathen had sought to paint the likeness of their images. Okay, so we all know at the heathen day, especially the wicked, have painted over the faces of the original judges, kings, and priests. Okay. 49, they brought also the priest's garments and the first fruits and the tithes, and the Nazarites they stirred up, who had accomplished their days. Then cried they with a loud voice toward heaven, saying, what shall we do with these, and whither shall we carry them away? For thy sanctuary is trodden down and profaned, and thy priests are in heaviness and brought low. And lo, the heathen are assembled together against us to destroy us. What things they imagine against us thou knowest. How shall we be able to stand against them, except thou, O power, be our help? Then sounded they with trumpets, and cried with a loud voice. And after this Judas ordained captains over the people, even captains over thousands, and over hundreds, and over fifties, and over tens. 56, but as for such as were building houses, or had betrothed wives, or planting vineyards, or were fearful those he commanded that they should return every man to his own house, according to the law. So the camp removed and pitched upon the south side of Emas. And Judah said, Arm yourselves and be valiant men, and see that ye be in readiness against the morning, that ye may fight with these nations that are assembled together against us to destroy us in our sanctuary. All right. Let's see. I got a verse 59 says, For it is better to die in battle than to behold the calamities of our people in our sanctuary. Verse 60, Nevertheless, as the will of the Most High is in heaven, so let him do. So, I'm going to get a scripture in the book of 1 Samuel. Skip it. 1 Samuel chapter 17. 1 Samuel 17 and verse 50. Going into the bout between David and Goliath, how a small company had stood against many and won. Well, how, in David's case, someone so small, meek, and frail up against someone so giant and mighty. So 1 Samuel 17 and 50, it says, So David prevailed over the, let's see. Let me start. I'm going to start at 1 Samuel chapter 17. I'm going to start at I'm gonna start at verse 40. 1 Samuel 17 and 40 says, And he took his staff in his hand and chose him 5 smooth stones out of the brook, and put them in a shepherd's bag which he had, even in a scrip, and his sling was in his hand, and he drew near to the Philistines. This is talking about David. And the Philistine came on and drew near unto David, and the man that bare the shield went before him. And when the Philistine looked about and saw David, he disdained him, for he was but a youth, and ruddy, and of a fair countenance. And the Philistine said unto David, Am I a dog that thou comest to me with staves? And the Philistine cursed David by God. So basically, being a mighty warrior, he expected a mighty opponent, a challenger, but instead he just saw himself, he got a little boy. Well, a young man, actually. So he felt kind of insulted that he insulted David. Verse 44, And the Philistine said to David, Come at me, and I will give thy flesh unto the fowls of the air and to the beasts of the field. 45, Then said David to the Philistine, Thou comest to me with a sword, and with a spear, and with a shield, but I come to thee in the name of the Lord Yahweh Ba'Shem Yahshua host, the power of the armies of Israel, whom thou hast defied. Verse 46, This day will the Lord deliver thee into mine hand, and I will smite thee and take thine head from thee, and I will give the carcasses of the host of the Philistines this day unto the fowls of the air and to the wild beasts of the earth, that all the earth may know that there is a power in Israel. 47, All this assembly shall know that the Lord saveth not with sword and spear, for the battle is the Lord's, and he will give you into our hands. 48, And it came to pass, when the Philistine arose and came and drew nigh to meet David, that David hastened and ran toward the army to meet the Philistine. 49, And David put his hand in his bag, and took thence a stone, and slang it, and smote the Philistine in the forehead, that the stone sunk into his forehead, and he fell upon his face to the earth. 50, So David prevailed over the Philistine with a sling and with a stone, and smote the Philistine and slew him, but there was no sword in the hand of David. Therefore David ran and stood upon the Philistine, and took his sword, and drew it out from the sheath thereof, and slew him, and cut off his head therewith. And when the Philistines saw their champion was dead, they fled. Okay. And 52, And the men of Israel and of Judah rose and shouted and pursued the Philistines until thou come to the valley of the gates of Ekron. And the wounded Philistines fell down by the way of Sha'araim, even unto Gath and unto Ekron. So, and here's another script. Back that up. Excuse me. So this is, I'm going to close out. So Romans 8 and 31. Romans 8 and 31. Damn. Romans 8 and 31, and it says, What shall we then say to these things? If God be for us, who can be against us? So, if the Most High is on our side, what can anyone else do against us? And that was the thing with chapter 3 in the book of First Maccabees. Judas and a small company using guerrilla warfare, took on larger armies and prevailed. And, making a name for himself, getting that reputation, and, word spreading about what he's done and all that that he can do. Many nations and other armies rose up against him, and he took them out too. So then the elect, the 1/3, we're basically a spiritual army within itself, and eventually, Yahweh Hashem Yahushai is going to turn the fishers into hunters. Because eventually they're all, in these last days, this devil's going to come down with that great wrath, and he's going to, come against the elect. And that's when the Lord is going to lift up that standard. The 2/3 will be willing in that day, and will be willing the day of the power, but, the 2/3, they still got to suffer their own fate on this side. All right, and let's see, what else do we have on this? This is just this is about the Hasmonean dynasty and all that. This is the son of Antiochus Epiphanes, Antiochus the fifth Jupiter. But other than that, I hope that this was an edifying lesson to the body and to this to the few sincere believers and listeners. But we'll get more into the Hasmonean dynasty later, Lord willing, when if Yahweh Hashem Yahushua permits. But other than that, this is just mainly about Judas defeating more of these armies, and reconsecrating the second temple. Okay, so we'll go into First Maccabees chapter 4 at a later time. But with closing, I would like to give all the honor, glory, and praise unto Yahweh Bahashem, Yahweh Shai, Bahashem, Rakakwadash. Double honors and respect to the elders and to the apostle, the great millstone. Peace and blessing to all Akim that are preaching and teaching this word with 100% truth and sincerity, and unto the men, women, and children that are listening and learning, and unto the Bayat, the Dawadah, the elect house of David that is scattered abroad, I give you my utmost and sincere salutations. See you in the next lesson, Lord willing. Kwam Yasharala, Wa Abba Babal.